It all began in Sacramento, California in 1976. A man started breaking into homes always when no one was there. He'd leave shoelaces under couch cushions, unlock a window, and prep the house like a predator laying a trap. Then, later on the night, he'd come back wearing a ski mask, gloves, and carrying a knife or a gun. He became known for shining a flashlight into the eyes of the women in the house, blinding her as he barked commands. And if a man was present, he'd force the woman to tie him up, then he'd tie her up, then reinforce the man's ties himself, making sure that the man couldn't move. Then he'd place dishes on the man's back and threaten, if I hear them clatter, I'll kill everyone in the house.
That is the most savage thing ever.
Then he'd take sentimental keepsakes. So things that he knew were sentimental to you, that's what he would take, even if it wasn't of value. Then he'd spend hours raping the woman in the other room. So the guys can hear the entire time and they can't move because they have a bunch of dishes on their back. And if they knock it over, then he said that he'd come out and kill them. He did this 22 times in his first year. So not only was it meticulously planned out, but then he got extremely good at it because he did it so many times. 22 times in 1 year is an average of about 2 times a month.
Yeah.
Which,
Damn near.
Even doing it twice in a year is a lot for a crime like that. So doing it twice a month, that's a lot.
He really felt like he could get away with it. That's why he did it that often. He was like, and
you'll see why he thought he could really get away with it. So at this time, he was known as the Visalia Ransacker.
What?
Because he would
neighborhood?
Yeah, Visalia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but then he'd also ransack their homes.
Oh,
so
shit.
like I told you before, a lot of times he wouldn't take things that are of crazy value, but like your house was ransacked when he was done, even your fridge. So while he was doing this, sometimes he'd ransack your home and he wouldn't even take anything. He would just do that just to throw the police off because they're looking to see if valuable items are gone and, there's no fingerprints and nothing of value is gone. So at first he started targeting women who were home alone. But then one time the local newspaper mentioned he seemed to avoid the homes with men in them. He took that as a challenge and completely switched up his MO. And then his next set of attacks started becoming super fixated on couples.
The fact that he took what the newspaper said as a challenge is insane.
Yeah.
That he really put his pride and ego into killing people and doing all these things.
No, yeah, he definitely had pride in what he was doing because it was meticulously planned, always well thought out. He always knew how to vanish. He had to do a lot of prep just to do it.
That's what I'm saying.
He had to commit 2 break-ins per break-in.
Per break-in.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
He broke in before, set up the scene to make it easier to break in again. I've never heard of some shit.
But that's what I'm saying. I think he felt like it was a job for him. Like you know how you go to your job, whether you like it or not, you do your job because you get paid.
Yeah.
He took it as a job because he went there. He prepared so meticulously, and then he just meticulously vanished too. That's very scary. On a serial killer, that's the most scariest thing because that tells you that they don't care. They don't give a flip if they get caught or not.
But it's funny you should say that because there's a few times that victims said that they heard him crying and talking to himself under his breath, saying different things like, I'm sorry, Mom, or I'm sorry, Bonnie was another name that he would say. And they're like, this guy's fucking nuts, Yeah, it was wild. This was a wild time. It gets crazier than that. So one of the most harrowing stories came from Jane Carson Sandler, his 5th known victim. It was October 1976. Her husband had literally just left for work less than 10 minutes before, and her son had crawled into bed with her. He was 3 at the time. And then she heard the garage door slam. 3 minutes later, in came barging a built man with a ski mask, gloves, and a large kitchen knife. Jane offered him money, jewelry, and anything that he wanted in the house, but he hissed through clenched teeth because that's the way he used to talk, I guess, to try to, either he was really angry or he was trying to disguise his voice, and he said, shut up or I'll kill you. He then tied her up, took her son away, then dragged Jane out of bed and assaulted her. Another devastating story came in November 1977, where 13-year-old Margaret Wardlow was his youngest known victim. She woke up to a flashlight in her face. He tied her up and left the room. She listened, and he was in the kitchen, ransacking the kitchen and grabbing dishes. Then he went into her mother's room. Now, Margaret already knew that the MO was whoever's room he went to next after the dishes, or whatever victim that was in the house that he went to next after going to the kitchen. She knew that his MO was that he was grabbing dishes to put on the other person's body of the person that he would molest. So he would go to the kitchen, and usually if there was a man and a woman home, he's going to the guy next because he's putting the dishes on the guy so he can go and assault the woman.
Right.
So she knew, okay, if he comes into my room right after leaving the kitchen, he's going to go assault my mom. If he goes to my mom's room, he's going to come and assault me. So he heard him go into her mom's room, and she was like, okay, I know I'm going to get assaulted now. And that's exactly what ended up happening. But Margaret also knew that he fed off of fear. Like, he loved the fact that whoever he was victimizing was afraid in that moment. And as you can imagine, a built dude with a ski mask and a butcher knife that's catching you off guard, that's shining a flashlight and screaming at you.
I'll scare
and you
anybody.
just woke up. The amount of fear that you're showing him, if he's getting off on that, if you could be calm, cool, collected, he's not gonna get what he's used to getting.
Yeah. Which
is why he keeps doing it in the first place. So with that in mind, she said, okay, I'm not gonna feed him anything. I'm not gonna show him that I'm scared. She said that it would take some of his power away. So as you can imagine, California is petrified of this dude by now.
In shambles.
He's not only meticulously planning out these things, he's not only robbing people, he's also beating people almost to death. He's raping women and children now at this point.
And taking stuff from your home. He's like doing all of the above.
He's doing all of the above except murdering people at this point. And
at that point,
investigators are starting to think, we think that this guy actually might start escalating the murder. Like, he seems like he wants to murder, but just can't fully pull the trigger on it yet. So as you can imagine, because everyone in the city has in Northern California has a ton of fear right now, they're holding, press conferences and town halls. And in 1979, during a town hall meeting, a man stood up and declared, if he ever came into my house, I'd kill him.
Oh my.
Just a few months later, that same man's house was invaded, and the Golden State Killer nearly beat him and his wife to death. Like, that beating was one of the worst beatings that he had given anyone up until that point, which let the investigators know, okay, this guy is not only paying attention to media coverage, he's also showing up at these town halls as though he's a regular civilian. So he's among us, and he's paying attention.
He's playing the literal game of Among Us, which is scary.
Oh yeah, I remember that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is literally the game of Among Us.
That is literally the game of Among Us. Is which one of us is it?
Oh, that's crazy. In 1979, the rapes in Northern California stopped, but the violence didn't. It just evolved. This is when he actually started murdering his victims.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, because...
So the guy was right. So that cop that said he was probably going to start murdering soon was right.
He was right. Yeah, because in December 1979, Robert Offerman and Deborah Manning were killed. In March 1980, Charlene and Lehman Smith were found bludgeoned to death in Ventura. 5 months later, Keith and Patrice Harrington were killed in Dana Point. In February 1981, Manuela Withune was raped and murdered in her home. He was evolving his crimes over time and with what the media coverage was saying about him.
Yeah.
Right? It was like he was ransacking houses at first and robbing people. And then they said, okay, he's and beating people up. And they said, okay, but he's not really taking anything. And then he started taking things and beating people up. And then people started saying, yeah, he only attacks when the men aren't home. And then he started attacking and doing everything he was doing before when men were home. And then then somebody said, well, if he ever broke into my house and did that, I'd kill him. And he broke into his house and
damn
beat
near killed him
to almost death, but then escalated right after that one to actually killing people.